The servers were melting. That was the only way Ethan could describe it. Alarms blinked red across the glass-lined control room like tiny flares screaming for rescue. Screen after screen flashed warnings: system failure, data lost, network collapse, each one a nail hammered deeper into his fear. It wasn't even his mess, but he was standing in the middle of it, feeling the weight of catastrophe closing in. All because the CEO, Adrian Voss, a billionaire with a cruel smirk carved permanently across his face, needed someone to blame. Ethan had been a maintenance technician, a single dad trying to keep his job after too many late arrivals caused by dropping off his daughter at school. Now, in front of him, Voss stood with a mocking tilt of his head and a voice dripping disdain as he gestured toward the frozen core server. "Fix this impossible disaster," he said, "and he'd pay $200 million. His board members laughed quietly behind him because everyone knew it was a joke. Everyone except the little girl who had followed her father inside because the babysitter canceled at the last minute. And because she believed her father could do anything. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in stories where the underdog rises when everyone counts them out, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps more people find these stories and keeps them alive. Ethan had felt humiliated, cornered, and terrified. He needed the job desperately. Being a single father wasn't a life he chose, but one that fell onto him when Lily was only 4. His wife had walked out with the words, "I can't do this anymore," leaving him holding their daughter and their future with trembling hands. He had since patched together a life of small rents, long shifts, and grocery lists carefully calculated to the last coin. Every night he tucked Lily in with a smile he fought hard to earn. She was 9 now, bright, curious, always scribbling numbers and shapes. But she was still a child. And children didn't belong in the middle of corporate storms. Yet she had been there, watching as Voss laughed at her father. Ethan remembered the sting, how the executives smirked, how Voss waved his hand as though brushing away garbage, how the room felt smaller and crueler with every second. He told them the failure wasn't his fault. The system had been crumbling long before he arrived. But excuses meant nothing to a billionaire who enjoyed breaking people. So Ethan stood with shoulders heavy, feeling those familiar claws of helplessness digging into him. But Lily didn't see the world like that. She saw puzzles, she saw patterns, she saw problems waiting to be explored. And most importantly, she saw her dad not as a man cornered, but as a man who had always found a way, even when they had nothing. The moment she squeezed his hand and stepped forward, Ethan felt sheer panic spread through him. He wanted to pull her back, shield her, protect her from the laughter that was sure to come. But she walked right up to the glowing pillars of the central server, peering at the frozen code streams reflected on the giant screens around them. The executives murmured, amused and confused. A child? Here? But Lily didn't notice their voices. She studied the interface like she was reading a storybook. Ethan remembered how, at age 7, she had taken apart her broken tablet and put it back together while humming. 2 months ago, her elementary school teacher said she was the kind of mind that appeared once in a generation. But she was 9. 9. So Ethan held his breath as she reached for the auxiliary keyboard. She didn't type randomly. Her fingers danced as if following music only she could hear. And suddenly, the screens responded. Operations that had locked were shifting. Frozen lines of code began unscrambling. The system logs reorganized. She murmured softly under her breath, tracing patterns in the air, identifying loops and anomalies in ways that didn't belong in a child's world. The executives stepped closer, their amusement draining. Within 60 seconds, every red alert turned orange. Within 90, they turned yellow. Within 3 minutes, the entire system clicked back to green. Silence fell like a stone into an ocean. Voss stopped smiling. Ethan felt his knees give out as he whispered her name, astonished, terrified, and inexplicably proud all at once. Lily turned to him, her face glowing with innocent triumph, and said it was easy. She said it like she had just tied her shoes. The room burst into chaos. The board members shouted. Voss demanded to know what she did. Engineers scrambled to the logs to understand her corrections, but Lily just reached for her father's hand again and said she was hungry. Ethan had carried her out of the room, stunned beyond words. Voss had shouted after him that they needed to talk, but all Ethan cared about was getting Lily somewhere safe, away from men who saw value instead of humanity. He took her outside, sat her on a bench, and held her close. He didn't know whether to cry or laugh or pray. He felt the world shifting under his feet. He didn't know in what direction. That moment was the beginning, because news traveled fast in the upper floors. And within hours, Voss discovered that the impossible failure his team had been battling for 3 days, one that would have cost the company billions, had been solved by a child belonging to the lowest-ranked employee in the building. By the next morning, everything exploded. First came the media, then investors, then the board, who realized this wasn't just a miracle, it was a story the entire world would be talking about. And Voss, who had mocked the father, now needed the daughter. Ethan woke up to people knocking on his tiny apartment door. They brought suits, lawyers, contracts, promises. They wanted Lily. They wanted her mind. But Ethan refused. His daughter wasn't a bargaining chip. She wasn't a tool. She was a child who still slept with a nightlight and asked to hear fairy tales before bed. He took her out of school for a week just to breathe. He turned off his phone. He tried to pretend the world wasn't trying to swallow them whole. But he couldn't hide forever. 3 days later, Voss himself appeared outside their apartment. He didn't come with arrogance this time. He came with apology, awkward, stiff, forced through pride, but real enough that Ethan recognized it. Voss explained that he wanted to help, that he wanted to give them security, education, protection from the sharks circling their lives after the public learned what Lily could do. He offered money, more than Ethan would ever dream of. He offered the $200 million he had jokingly promised. He offered a future. But Ethan didn't trust him, not yet, not fully. Yet something shifted when Voss looked down at Lily, who peeked from behind her father's arm and whispered that she reminded him of himself when he was young, except smarter, freer, unbroken by the world. There was a pain in his voice that didn't match the billionaire exterior. Ethan saw a man who had lost too much on his journey upward, but that didn't mean he would hand over his daughter. Instead, Ethan made a decision that shocked everyone. He told Voss he didn't want the money. He didn't want fame. He didn't want Lily exploited or turned into a prodigy mascot for corporate headlines. He wanted one thing only: a future where Lily could grow safely, learn safely, and live freely without being chased, used, or drained of her childhood. So Voss did something no one expected. He offered Ethan a partnership. True, equal, unprecedented. Not built around money, but around security and freedom. He proposed creating a new division focused solely on nurturing young talent responsibly, with Lily as a protected student, not a worker. Ethan would lead the ethical oversight. Lily would remain a child, with full rights to say no, to stop, to rest. It sounded impossible. Sounded unreal. But Voss insisted it wasn't charity. It was atonement, maybe even redemption. And for the first time, Ethan saw not a billionaire tyrant, but a man who wanted to fix something far bigger than a server he accepted in the months that followed Lily blossomed. Not under pressure, but under guidance. She attended special classes with teachers trained for gifted children. She played in the sunshine, she learned piano, she made friends. And in her free time, when she felt like it, she explored puzzles and patterns that fascinated her. But now she had protection. She had choice. She had freedom. And Ethan had something he had never known: peace. His world slowly transformed, from cramped apartments to safe homes, from exhaustion to balance, from fear to possibility. He worked side by side with Voss, who gradually lost the hard edges that had defined him. Lily softened him. Ethan did too. The company changed. Policies changed. Lives changed. But the real turning point came one evening, when Ethan found Voss sitting alone in the new Innovation Center, staring at a framed photograph of Lily and the first whiteboard she had ever scribbled on. Voss admitted quietly that he grew up poor too, that he built his empire by killing every softness in himself, and that Lily's brilliance had reminded him not of what he had, but what he lost along the way. Ethan sat beside him, no longer an enemy, but something closer to a friend, and for a moment the past didn't matter, only the future did. The world eventually forgot the headlines. But the people inside that company didn't forget the day a single dad and his 9-year-old daughter changed everything, not because they chased money, but because they refused to be broken by it. And the $200 million? Voss still tried to give it to them. Ethan refused every time, smiling, but Lily, with her usual innocent wisdom, told Voss he could keep it and use it to help other kids like her, kids with bright minds and tough lives who just needed someone to see them. So Voss did. And years later, when Lily grew up and became one of the world's youngest technological leaders, she would tell every reporter the same thing, that the real miracle wasn't that she solved a system failure in 3 minutes. It was that the world finally recognized the power of kindness, humility, and second chances. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us keep creating stories that inspire and heal. Before you read the final lines, please drop a comment telling us which moment touched you the most. And in the end, the world didn't remember the laughter of the executives or the cruelty of a billionaire's dare. It remembered a father who protected his daughter, a child who saved a corporation, and 2 lives that proved brilliance means nothing without love to guide it, and everything when it does.